giving me the mic, but I will do it because we are recording for all the media channels of the world. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Sáez. I am the Executive Director for Water Education Colorado. We are so happy to be here this morning. We have done this type of events for a while. And for those of you who are new to what's Water Education Colorado, we were created in 2002 after a big drought in the state of Colorado. We are the official nonprofit in charge of educating all Colorados and inform people so we can make smart decisions about water stewardship in the state. I mean, there is clearly a reason why we picked this location. There is plenty of water out there that we can see, and there's a whole economy that relies on it. I will not bore you more about it. I started as a new executive director back last fall, and we are so thankful to have this panel with us today. Ryan, Kim, and Kelly. I will let them introduce themselves in a second. But also Sidney is our intern at Water Education Colorado. And when I met her briefly the first time, she was telling me about her love for skiing and where she grew up in the town of Steamboat. And Tennis and I were talking about doing this event, which technically was going to be at a brewery in the Front Range. And I was like, I think, why don't we talk to Sidney and brainstorm what we can do? And it was all their idea to host this here in Steamboat, and so I'm very thankful to be here today. So I'm going to pass it to Sidney briefly so you can introduce yourself and let the panelists also share a little bit about who they are and what we're talking here today.
Hi everyone, thank you. My name is Sidney. I grew up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and am now an intern, publication production intern with PEPO. So I'm super excited. Thank you for everyone to be here. I think we'll just start, if you guys could all just introduce yourself, your relationship to Steamboat, your roles, and kind of how you interact with snow. Pass this around.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Water Education Colorado for making this event possible. This is a real honor to be here today. My name is Brenner. I was fortunate that my grandfather moved here back in the early 1940s. So I grew up on a ranch and a farm south of Steamboat Springs. I know there's not a lot of ranch and farms in the same operation, but we were one of the few. In fact, I think we were the highest farm in the valley for producing oats and wheat and barley. I got into ski racing to avoid a lifetime of working on the ranch, and ended up being very involved in the ski racing and coaching, and I have my own sports medicine business. But I have a long public service career I was on the city council for 8 years. I was able to convince our city council to file a recreation in-channel diversion water right. It's just outside there in the river. That protected our water supply and our recreation industry here in Steamboat, which is so critical. I've also served for 14 years on the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District Board. That's the quasi-governmental agency that had its own stagecoach in Yampa and a lot of water rights, and we spent a lot of time looking out for the water rights and water interests of the valley. I represented them on the Basin Roundtable, which was also a response to the drought in 2002 and helped with grassroots coordination of water interests in each of the 8 major river basins plus the metro area. And we all sent 2 representatives to a committee called the Interbasin Compact Committee, and we work on water issues around the state and try to coordinate efforts between these roundtables and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ken. So first of all, I really want to thank Water Education Colorado, an organization that's very close to my heart. Up until recently, I served on the board of WECO. I owe a lot of my career to WECO. I went through the Water Leaders Program, the WECO Water Leaders Program in 2016, really changed the trajectory of my career. And there are, people in that organization that just are, you care about people, you care about water, and you care about Colorado. So thank you for coming to my valley, for taught. So, all right, in addition to the shout out to WECO, I also want to thank my fellow panelists for being here inside on a sunny day, and for all of you for being inside on a snowy, sunny day. Hopefully we all get out soon to enjoy the snow in Colorado, or in Steamboat today. A little bit about myself. Kelly Romero-Heaney is my name, and I currently serve as the Deputy Policy Director for Colorado's Department of Natural Resources. That means that I oversee natural resource policy in areas like forest health, water, parks, lands, wildlife, energy, federal affairs. I think that's about it. Anyway, a lot of things. So,
Just that.
yeah. But admittedly, I really just coordinate a brilliant team of high-performing experts. They're incredible, and so I'm really grateful to be able to serve in this role. I formerly was the Assistant Director of Water for the Department of Natural Resources and was also Governor Polis's Water Policy Advisor. A little bit about the Department of Natural Resources. Our mission is to develop, preserve, and enhance the state's natural resources for the benefit and enjoyment of current and future generations. I'm not gonna lie, that is a mission that is growing increasingly challenging. As we see climate change, population growth, political changes, all of the things really making that harder to do. To meet the challenge, the department has established 5 strategic priorities that I'm tasked with kind of coordinating and moving forward. Those include advancing biodiversity, balancing conservation and recreation, facilitating the energy transition, enhancing tribal engagement, and then strengthening climate resilience in Colorado. I will say that in Colorado, snow is our water. It's our primary water supply. Water has something to do with every single one of these strategic priorities. So snow is critical to these strategic priorities and to the department's mission. Also, I'll just note that although I cover policy for the entire state, which brings me down to Capitol a lot this time of year and around Colorado, I actually have called this valley home for 25 years. Part of those 25 years, I lived up the Upper Valley. Part of that time, I lived at the Fetcher Ranch. I was fortunate enough to start my career in the early 2000s as a hydrotech for the U.S. Forest Service with my friend Sally Caribou, who taught me everything I know. And really, we got to collect data on the headwaters of this watershed. Back before this, a lot of things changed on our landscape: beetle kill, catastrophic wildfire, 20-year drought, etc. We also got to detail fire crews periodically. My radio handle was the short shot. Short. And then I went on to work as an environmental consultant for a while in Northwest Colorado, and then eventually the Water Resources Manager for the city of Steamboat Springs, a position that Julie Baxter holds now, doing a fabulous job at it. In that role, I was able to work on street management planning, water rights planning, conservation, wildfire work, help set up the Yampa River Fund, all kinds of things. So, needless to say, I have a very close connection to this valley, and then my connection to snow. I'm just a Steamboat Mountain Mama, right? I was just noting to the Barbiers here that at the last ski race in Crested View, I was the only mom that had both last cross country race, the only mom that had a U18, which means under 18, and a U8, under 8, racing in the same race. And like the rest of you, snow is something that, it's something we play in, it's something we shovel, it's something that I drive in a lot over rabbit ears when I'm heading down to the Capitol this time of year. I mean, snow is just like baked into us, right? So, hopefully I answered all those questions. Thanks for all the time.
Well, I am not nearly as impressive as our fellow panelists, but thank you for letting me share the stage with you. I'm just a snowboarder that got lucky and got his dream job accidentally. high school, and 5 days later I moved to Yellowstone National Park and started working and fell in love with the mountains. I lived in Wisconsin before that. I'd never seen mountains or snow the way you have it out here, and it was just mind-blowing to me. So I moved out, went to Telluride for that winter, and then a couple winters actually, and then moved to Steamboat in 2002. Then I went up to Bellingham, Washington, and went to school for a few years and came back in 2010. Worked with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, helping get all the kids out in the woods, building trail. Really loved that, but was kind of better positioned up on the mountain. I really like to be on the snow. I'm there all the time. It's part of my job. And yeah, so I was really focused on being really a good steward of our mountain through making snow, through having snowcats up there. These are all things that kind of contribute to our problems with watershed and climate change. So we're trying to do our best to try to minimize those things and really taking a lot of effort, or putting a lot of effort into trying to make sure that we're being good stewards of there. Thanks.
I didn't share my connection with Steamboat. I'm not from Steamboat. However, my first winter in Colorado, this was the place where my friends who I met in grad school in Ohio, who lived in Wyoming, decided to we're gonna meet at Steamboat. And so I was just, my first winter in Colorado, we came over here. I was so broke, I couldn't even afford the ski lift. And so when they all were skiing, I decided just to go snowshoeing. So while they were in the mountain skiing, I was just snowshoeing around the town, checking out the hot springs. And I was like, this is beautiful, I love this place. And every time that I go back here, I was sharing earlier to our fellow panelists, there's a sense of community in this. There's something different on the Steamboat Spring. Like Steamboat has the people, the folks here, when you talk to them, they're like, come to my house, let's have dinner, bring your family, stop by, come back here. Like there's a sense of community that is different than other mountain towns in Colorado. And I think there's something about these people. And the relationship that the folks here have with snow, with the mountains, with their water, and with their natural resources. So I think that it is just a great opportunity to talk about water and the reality of winter and how the industry and the economy of this community relies on it.
Perfect, those are all great introductions. My first question is actually for Brian. Do you have a season in the past that you use as a kind of signature example of climate impacting snowmaking operations at the Steamboat Ski Resort? And maybe what are some of the lessons you've learned from kind of this season, or could be multiple seasons?
You have time to think about it.
There isn't like a single season. It's kind of a progression of seasons. But there is one that stands out that's like, that's a worst case scenario almost, not worst, but a pretty bad case scenario, which was 2001-2002 season. We were trying to build a big air jump for a Olympic qualifying event, and it was hot, really, really hot and dry, and everything was brown around it. And we luckily got like a 3-day shot where we could make snow to get that going, get the mountain open, and everything turned out okay. But it was looking dire there for a while. So that really kicked off. We were in the middle of planning our the big expansion up on the mountain with snowmaking, the lift, the restaurants, moving everything around and making the resort a little bit nicer place to visit. And that really helped us push over the line that we were going to install big fan guns for snowmaking, which are much more efficient. And we're also exploring other things like snow storage, like just trying not to make as much snow and just keep as much snow as we can. There's these blankets they have in Finland where you can just hold on to it and then you don't have to pump as much. So that saves us money. It takes a little less water out of the river. It does, for that first few years, less water does flow back into the river if we store it on the mountain. But we think that, that kind of offsets itself by not using as much power. So we are, and then we also have this another drone that can fly around and measure the volume of snow that we've made and where it is on the mountain. And so we're using that to really cut down on overmaking. And then we're also using that to build models for where the snowcats can push snow so that we're kind of efficient. We don't have spots that are a ton of snow and then a little bit of snow, everything. So we use less diesel as the season goes on as we get everything nice and smoothed out, right? So it really spurred all of that technology kind of being at the forefront of our minds where
question. I've thought the longest about this one, and I don't have a good answer. I mean, if we look back, if we go off of just what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, and you look at the data is pretty overwhelming what we're talking about. This part of the state has warmed up in the last 30 years about 2.5 degrees Celsius. We know that for every 1 degree of increase in temperature, you're going to see between 5 and 9% decrease in our stream flows. That's grim. And we know that we're watching the Colorado River very closely, especially in the heat of the negotiations for an operational agreement that are due next year. I mean, it has to be finalized by then, and we're not even close, so we're waiting for a record of decision on the river right now. But the stream flows going into Powell are just consistently low. And unlike the lower basin states that are allowed to utilize the reservoirs, and all they need to do is call up and say, release more water, that's not what we get. We get what's sitting outside this window, and if it doesn't snow, then we don't have enough water. And that is our reservoir. We do have limited storage in the state, but not a lot. We know that not only are the the daytime temperatures are higher. We talk about that all the time. More startling is that the average nighttime temperature is warmer than the increases that we're seeing during the day. That just means that often we won't see the snow freeze at night. And so once we begin to snow melt in the spring, it really accelerates. So we see these very fast runoffs. The paleo data shows us doing tree ring studies going back 1,100 years. This is the longest, most serious drought that we've had yet. So you may not want to call it climate change. I work with a lot of pretty conservative people, as does Kelly, but everybody agrees on extended drought. There's no argument there. It's really about the timing of the moisture that comes off. And the other thing that's startling to me is just the evapotranspiration. Growing up as a kid on the ranch, I was outside working every day, and it rained a lot. Those were like good days. You didn't have to work all day. You got some time off because it rained really hard. But so often now, especially on a hot summer, you can see the rain. It's raining. It's never going to get to the ground. If it does, it's virga. It just is here and gone. So these are such startling changes that it really makes it hard. So we're going to have to adapt. Exactly how we're going to do that, I'm not sure. But we know that it's going to change, and we know it's going to continue to change probably faster. So looking ahead that far is, for me, really a difficult thing. It's all we can do is continue to work on this. Forest health is a huge issue for me. I'm working on a Headwaters of the Colorado initiative. There's over 40 different state and federal agencies, local governments, NGOs that are all supporting this collaborative work to work on 2 million acres of forest between here, half of it's here and half of it's in Wyoming, one big Hub 12 chunk of forest and rangeland that we're trying to do everything we can up in the headwaters to hold on to our water. When the beavers were prevalent here, we had water stored up in the high country. That's you slow the runoff down, give us some late season flows. So we need to really put serious effort into that. So how the industry can adopt to this is going to be a real challenge. Ryan, good luck. I'm going to Chamber of Commerce loves you, Juan.
Thank you, Ken. That definitely is a difficult question to answer. Next is for Kelly. You actually mentioned this kind of in your introduction with the Department of Natural Resources, one of the goals being climate resiliency. What do you think are some of the ways that Colorado can become more resilient to climate change as we're seeing obviously less snow, less water, change impacts on tourism, recreation, etc.? Also very broad.
Well, first of all, I just want to note the Coloradans are incredibly adaptable. We've had to be, right? We have wild weather, wild climate. From the eastern plains, farmers out in the Republican River Basin, or folks in the southern high plains who generations ago dealt with the Dust Bowl, to ranchers up on the Yampa River Valley who've had to adapt to 3 wire winters and sometimes not. I feel like a adaptability is, it's just, again, baked into our bones. It's baked into who we are. I think we also can learn a lot from the people who have called this valley and many other valleys on the West Slope home since time immemorial, the youths, right? Who took their cues from, from nature, from weather, from climate, as they migrated, and even as they used fire as a tool, as they stewarded this landscape. So certainly climate adaptability is just a part of what we do, and we'll have to continue to do. It's just gonna be on a greater scale. A couple things that are really important to the Department of Natural Resources and important to me, and that's addressing wildfire risk by matching forestscape, firescape treatments with riverscape treatments. And what I mean by that is we do need to do forest health work, and there's a whole suite of tools to be able to do that. So that we can reduce the catastrophic scale of wildfire in Colorado and also protect, certain values that are at risk, including water, life, infrastructure, homes, communities. But we have to match that with restoring our natural stream systems in a way that when that fire comes, whether it's the debris flow, changes in water quality, all the things that come with increased runoff, that they can absorb the impact of those wildfires. The department is doing this, and our agencies are working on this. The Colorado Water Conservation Board created the Wildfire Ready Watersheds program. Please look it up, it's incredible. We got funding for them to get out on the ground to help communities plan for those impacts, understand the risks, and to figure out what strategies they can put in place to build more resilience into their streams and their water systems. Then we also have this really great program at the Executive Director's Office called the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Plan Program, COSWAP. And what we're doing is doing landscape scale treatment grants. So grants for landscape scale, forest health projects, and we're doing workforce development grants through a partnership with the Colorado Youth Corps. Really important right now. Some of their federal funding is at risk. Also, we're teaming up with, actually we just announced a new partnership. We're teaming up with the Colorado National Guard to be working with veterans on wildfire projects. I think our first project is going to be outside of Kremling. And then we're also working with the Department of Corrections crews to help them kind of get those wildfire mitigation, landscape skills so that they're ready to enter the workforce when it's time for them. So really excited about that program. I think that's going to be a great tool in climate resiliency. Also, speaking of stream health and water resilience, there's been a lot of talk in this town about beavers, right? There's beavers, believers, and Steamboat, and across the state. It is a big topic statewide, and I do think that there's a lot of opportunity to figure out how do we restore beaver habitat, are there opportunities to do relocations, how do we work with nature, work with our very little tree-eating partners to help restore our natural stream systems. I'm not going to say it's like a panacea, it's not going to be the only solution, but I think there's a lot that we can accomplish. SuperSite, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they launched the development of a statewide beaver management plan that we're hoping should be wrapped up and finalized and launched by next January, February-ish. And that'll be looking at not just how do we restore habitat, how do we translocate, but what's really important is we focus on managing conflicts, right? Because beavers, they could dam up irrigation diversions, they could dam culverts, blow out roads, and so we need to figure out how do we manage those conflicts so that we're not, so they're not just a nuisance, right? So really excited about that as a climate resiliency tool. And then I'll also note that for our local communities, our urban communities, water conservation, landscape transformation is really important, right? We've got, tons of thirsty sod in Colorado, and so there's a real movement movement towards Colorado-scaping our urban landscapes, and in this town, we're calling it Yampa-scaping, right, Sáez? Garden, I was about to put a plug in for Garden in a Box. Talk to Sally Caribou right here with the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council. It's time that those of us that still have that irrigated turf, let's start transforming that. And I will say, climate resilient, landscapes in Colorado should be water efficient. They should be fire wise. So let's develop them in a way that help protect our homes and our neighbors' homes. And this is one more to add to the mix, pollinator friendly. So I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Those are amazing, hopefully, solutions for our future. I love how you also touch on youth, which kind of dives into my next question for Juan. Speaking to your prior experience or your experience with WECO, how do you think we can work to include youth into the conversation around water issues, and how can we connect kids' love of skiing in the outdoors, which I was one of them, to the impact of snow, water, and the changing climate?
That's a wonderful question. For those of you who might not know, I was the executive director for Environmental Learning for Kids, which is a nonprofit based out of Fort-Ridge, Denver, Northeast area. And in my previous role, we will introduce up to 6,000 plus youth and families to the outdoors and the love for Colorado. With that in mind, I hear you all talking and see your faces and just kind of the vibe that Steve was going to give us, right? Think about one of your favorite memories in the mountain. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Just think about one of your favorite memories in the mountains. Whether it is you were snowboarding, skiing, hiking, in the river, fishing, maybe just walking by the water, maybe just at a ranch, or growing your own food, or growing your own flowers. If I were to tell you, like, I'm ripping that away from you, I'm taking that memory, I'm deciding for you that you're no longer having that. You're gonna fight for that. You're gonna do whatever you can to make sure that that is not taken away from you. A lot of the youth, a lot of the engagement with young people, it takes to know it and understand it in order to protect it, in order to educate yourself, in order to want to do something and steward that thing. And so when it comes to water, if you are a young person who have never experienced that favorite memory in the mountains, whether that is in the winter or in the summer or during the fall and spring seasons, you probably won't care that much. And so a lot of the education that I think water education is seeking to do historically has been with adults and leaders in the space, people like Kelly who make important decisions at the state level. And I do believe that we cannot do absolutely anything without engaging and listening to what young people have to say. What I love about younger generation is they have no time for explanations, they want actions. We should start doing more of that. And there is this interesting balance between like what is here today, what I'm willing to fight for, and what I'm willing to let others fight for. And so I do believe that we need to come together, and this idea of like, oh, young people don't know enough. No, we all know together combined. I always hope that I will never become irrelevant. It's one of my biggest fears. The moment that I don't know what music is happening or what people are talking about. And so I do think part of being relevant is also like, I will be literally listening to and including the voice of young people into the policies, into the action, into the campaign, and the way how we talk about these issues. And so part of our experience with ELP has been putting young people in the forefront. I will get invited to a conference, they're like, you want the ED? I'm like, nah, I don't want to go and talk. They already hear me. Let's put a panel of young people and let's really listen to what they want to say. And even for this, I was like, Sidney, I talked to Tess about asking you to be part of it, because I'm like, you are from this community. I want you to be part of the panel. And so we need to start making space and stepping aside, and maybe we can also follow the voice of young people when it comes to stewarding water in the state of Colorado.
Great answer. Now back to Ryan. This kind of goes with a little bit with the first question. But when you're doing like seasonal planning, looking ahead, how does like a report of like El Nino, La Nina, thinking kind of like the broader climate change, in addition to like actual climate change, impact your outlook on a coming ski season?
Very easy questions.
This one actually is a very easy question.
I'm looking forward. Let's see.
No impact on my decision making at all. Weather's going to be weather. It'll show up when it shows up, and we're going to react to it when it gets there. And so that's kind of that's snowmaking, you know, or opening a ski hill or anything that has to do with weather. You just have to roll with the punches, and if you can't roll with those punches, you know, you're gonna have a bad time. So you know, we do kind of know that, okay, it's gonna be maybe a little warmer in the beginning of the year, on La Nina, I think, and then at the end of the year, we're gonna get a lot more snow. And we're kind of banking on that a little bit, but for the most part, we are going to make snow and groom snow and get everything kind of set up the way we want it to, regardless of what we're expecting for that year. And that really gets us set up for success all the way through the year. And then make sure that we have, you know, the snow that we need, and then when it gets warmer in the spring, that snow is released back into the ecosystem. So kind of a quick answer on that one. But you know, it's really not, you really can't do anything about it. So any plan you make, you know, like Mike Tyson said, you make, everyone makes a great plan to get punched in the face. So that's snowmaking, you know.
We should write that quote and put it on the website.
So next question is kind of more specific version of the first one I asked you, but how do you see local industries specifically adapting to changes in snow cycles kind of right now?
Okay, the first time we really had a major challenge here in the community for this, that at least in our recent memory, was in 1976, and it didn't really snow until March, and the ski area basically didn't function. I mean, we would shovel snow out of the trees to get in a little corridor right on the edge of the run, but it was grim. And then in 1980, it didn't snow until January. So if you lose the Christmas holiday, you might as well just, I mean, that's half of your year right there. So this precipitated some enormous changes in the community. One, snowmaking. You had to get to that new technology, and I used to make snow over at Olson Hill. You know, the city they would buy us a gun. They wouldn't pay for anybody to run it, so we as coaches volunteered, and we'd make snow so we could at least train over at Olson Hill, and they would supply us the water. But it also caused some pretty major changes here in the local government. The city council at that time for the city of Steamboat Springs, the city of Steamboat Springs is really two different areas. There's the old town and there's the mountain. The mountain is the Title 32 district that was formed for Mount Warner Water to provide water services and infrastructure for the ski area as it developed. But it was in the unincorporated area. The city of Steamboat Springs was getting their water out of Spring Creek. Those droughts caused that water supply to really not be viable anymore. So an annexation agreement took place. To annex that in, they would then provide all of the water for the entire city. The city would run the wastewater. It's the only way we can trust each other is if each of us have our hand on the other's throat. And that was how we survived, was to have that relationship. There was also a very important relationship between the business community. They came to us. There's a vendor fee when you collect your sales tax and you turn it in. You're allowed to keep 3.3% of that to pay for your troubles. And they agreed to put that money, and the city would match 1.7. So there was 5% of all sales tax revenues went into summer marketing. And that had grown, by the time I got on council in '98, that had grown to over 9% of the city's total budget we were spending. And if you remember back then, we were just overrun with growth here in the community. So it became a real challenge for us. And so those were the types of adaptations that took place at that point. I think that you're going to see more emphasis on summer recreation. You know, there used to be just a ski hill out there. You do a ton of activities in business in the summer now, and I think we're going to continue to see those types of general adaptations in the community. Agriculture is going to have a huge challenge because we just won't have the same amount of water for especially flood irrigated crops. So you're going to see some changes, and that's a major priority for the Colorado Water Congress and the Water Conservation Board and the Roundtables, is to make sure that we can sustain functional agriculture as kind of the core of our communities. So That's one that's especially important to me. And then we've also found that the importance of stored water. I don't think anybody in here is a big fan of reservoirs. We like to see the water flowing in the stream, but we know now that if you do that, the river's going to pretty well run dry in the summer. And in 2002, I think they got down. I've seen the water flow through Dinosaur National Monument at 27,000 cubic feet per second. That year it dropped to 2. So it can change pretty dramatically. So what's happened is that the Colorado River District, the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, the city, the Department of Water, the State Engineer's Office, the Division of Water Resources, have all begun to meet regularly every week and talk about how much water we can release. The legislature passed a bill that allowed us to release water and for environmental purposes to keep the river healthy. And Pete Vandekart, bless his heart, was always at the forefront of that discussion, trying to make sure that we could keep some recreation going on in the river, but it took these coordinated releases, because if the water temperature gets above 70, if the dissolved oxygen drops, if the flow is below 85 CFS, recreation is supposed to end. That's all types of fishing, boating, anything that in the river, just to try to protect the health of the fish. So we're making some progress. We're doing some adaptations, but we're going to have to do more.
That's a perfect segue into the next question for Kelly. What are some of the outdoor recreation initiatives that the Department of Natural Resources are working on? Kind of like, what are the current policies you and the state of Colorado are working on currently?
Great question. And I kind of want to build on some of what Juan was talking about, because at Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they have the Outdoor Equity Grant Program, which I think was created in 2021 by legislation.
At the time, I wasn't working a week with Ditas to fight for that
Yeah.
to be passed.
Yeah, I imagine you were involved in that, and it has been a wildly successful program. Let me just grab a couple stats here on that. So let's see, since its inception, 38,000 participants have been able to access recreation, conservation, educational, career opportunities in Colorado's outdoors, with participants in 41 Colorado counties. This is a program that really helps to increase access to the outdoors for youth and their families from communities that are traditionally underrepresented in outdoor recreation. I won't belabor the point that Juan already made, but yeah, getting folks engaged in loving the outdoors is a great way to them engaged in protecting, preserving, storing, and defending the outdoors. This year, we're working to grow that funding pot. We've increased our budget request for it. We're also working on potential legislation to redistribute the lottery waterfall, but we're also working on, Department of Revenue is working on a budget request that would significantly increase lottery revenue. So we're just trying to figure out how do we grow that program to at least try to meet some of the demand for it. So, and organizations in the Yampa Valley have been beneficiaries of that program. So I'd say that's one really good example. We also have our, CPW has our Keep Colorado Wild Pass. Been really great opportunity to generate revenue for the management and development of state parks. Also some funding for search and rescue, which being a search and rescue wife, my husband's in search and rescue, very grateful that they have additional revenue, which I think is really important as we see more people access the outdoors. And then I'll also note that we're trying to work on, big picture here. We're about to finalize something called a Colorado Outdoor Strategy, which is looking at how do we better balance climate resilient conservation and restoration, exceptional and sustainable outdoor recreation, and coordinated planning and funding. And what I'm getting at there is we don't want to have folks developing outdoor recreation in a vacuum, because then we can end up hurting other values such as wildlife, habitat, like public safety, water supply. So really excited to launch the Colorado Outdoor Strategy, work with local groups we call regional partnerships here. It's called the Recreational Roundtable. We've got groups like that around the state, figuring out ways that we can really balance conservation and recreation statewide. Also working on legislation to really grow the Outdoor Recreation Office at CPW for outdoor recreation outside of just the state parks so that we can make sure that that outdoor rec development is, again, balanced. And maybe I'll note too is, as we look at what we really need to do in outdoor recreation development, we need good planning. We need more trails, we need parking lots, and my personal favorite is we need more potties, right? And that is a really big deal. And maybe I'll just address kind of the elephant in the room is I'm very concerned about how the management outdoor rec on our federal lands is gonna look over these next few years. And I think the first thing you're gonna notice, there's gonna be poop all over the trailheads, right? You're gonna have overflowing pit toilets unless we can figure out ways to really advocate for, staffing of our federal land agencies. And that's just one of many, many impacts we'll potentially see. But at least that might be an impact that the general public will notice. And perhaps be motivated. Sorry, that's kind of I took that in a dark direction. Yeah, suffice it to say, yes, outdoor, enhancing outdoor recreation in a way that is equitable, accessible, all of these things is really important to the Department of Natural Resources.
Great. I think the next question for Juan also stems in education, but as also Water Education Colorado, why do you think education is such a critical component in the snow conversation in Colorado? Not obviously just for youth, but all adults.
I'm going to build from what Kelly was saying. I mean, we are all stewards of the state. And the truth is, if we just led to an agency or an institution be the only one to take care of what we share, clearly we're not doing our part. And so I believe that education is probably, it sounds cliche, but I think it's probably more important than ever. We at Water Education Colorado created Headwater magazines. There are some copies there. Please take some with you. We are committed to continue to create this 3 times a year magazine, trying to do more public events. We have experts that people share what are some of the local solutions. We most likely have the best ideas. People in the community, someone from Denver would not know what to do in the Yampa Valley, but you all know what to do in Yampa Valley. Same thing in the Western Slope. Same thing if you talk about the eastern side of the state. And so to me, it's this is an important time in history to really look inwards and to really identify what are the actions that could and have been happening locally. Because we're more powerful than what we might believe or that is being told to ourselves. So we're talking about the Colorado Garden. Oh my God.
Garden in the box.
Garden in the box. Great ideas. When we talk about the Outdoor Equity Fund, how do we connect? If we have a whole generation that is well informed, that knows what's right, they will know that if they go on a trail and there's no potty, they will do the best that they can to avoid polluted waterways. And so to me, it's we need to continue to share the stories, learn also from the original inhabitants of this land. You mentioned about native communities. There is a lot of native knowledge that is still there. How are we incorporating that into our education? And also, what are some of the initiatives at the state level that are bringing together resources from multiple places across Colorado, and they're ensuring that we're as effective as we can be? And so education takes everyone. And I think, you can, what you were saying about I hear you talking, and it's the moment that we lost the battle is the moment that we don't talk to each other. You were saying oh, we're holding each other's neck, but it's true. Even the Outdoor Equity Fund was bipartisan.
Mm-hmm.
So there are initiatives in the state that we as Coloradans, people who really love the state, we we believe is part of the identity of the state, and no one will come and tell us how we steward our land. So to me, education and the role that water education department has is to continue to be that place that regardless of what's happening, we uplift the stories, we bring the data, we bring all the side of the picture, and making sure that we can put the pieces of the puzzle together to build that image of what is the state that we want to have. And it sounds very easy, it's very difficult because to your point, sometimes we don't see eye to eye. But the moment that we stop seeing eye to eye, we lose. We all lose. So I think that's part of what makes us different, and that's part of the role of Water Education Colorado will continue to do in the near future as a space to hold that for everyone.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, definitely check out our materials afterwards from Lico. Last question for you, Ryan. Could you share a little bit about the ski industry's perspective on sustainability and water stewardship? Obviously, the Steamboat Ski Resort is a business, run on profit and growth, but how is sustainability, obviously water is part of that, built into your guys' mission?
Well, I think first of all, we all kind of moved here or grew up here loving the mountains, and so I think it's a personal thing for just about everyone that works on mountains, myself included, and so we all have this personal relationship to the mountain and want and need to keep it, as beautiful as it is, so that we can pass that down to generations after us, and so that they're also enjoying, skiing in the mountains and being introduced to it. And then, like I said, we have a business incentive as well, so our business is snow. If there's no snow, we have no business, And so I think the Yampa Valley River Fund and Friends of the Yampa are some big organizations that we donate big to. We want to do our best to make sure that the Yampa River, which is the place where we draw our water from for snowmaking, but also kind of keeps the lifeblood of the valley going. We want to make sure that that is there and for generations to come too as well. So, and then I kind of want to glom on to the whole, education and getting people experiences in the mountain. I fell in love with the mountains when I started having experiences in the mountains. And I think ski areas provide an experience in the mountains. And without ski areas, the millions of people, skier visits that show up at Steamboat and all the other resorts in Colorado and the rest of the United States will never get, might not get that experience in the mountains that might influence their thinking in the future when maybe they're sitting down at a ballot and they're looking at it and they're like, man, do I care about this? Like you were saying about kids that, if they don't have that experience, they're not going to care. So maybe those experiences really influence like that conservation. So we're really trying to provide, through all the business stuff, that the friendliest place to ski on the planet or whatever, that's really important to us, but that also like just gives really good experiences to people, so that they kind of pass that on to people around them. They bring their kids, they bring their families, they bring their friends, and introduce them to the mountains. So that's kind of the heart of where I think the ski industry and specifically Steamboat is, as far as water conservation issues.
Great answer, and as a skier, I can definitely attest to being exposed to it. Definitely, at least gave me for environmental stewardship activism being here today. My next question for you, Ken. How has your work with PEPO impacted Steamboat, and what role do you see this organization playing in the future when it comes to water scarcity issues?
PEPO is public education, participation, and outreach. This was one of the two specific actions included in House Bill 1177 passed by the Colorado State Legislature in 2005. It's what formed the roundtables, but they wanted us to work on public education. I am lucky enough to assume the chair following this young lady who did a tremendous job, had the committee up and running and doing a great job. She'd already, the only reason I look good at this is because she did such a great job. But public education is a really critical part of our mission. We do run radio ads and print ads, but that's all pretty old school. We're doing more and more with social media. Another shout out here to Sally. I guess we should add Sally under her as well. Right. Because Sally definitely, she's our PEPO liaison, which means she gets paid to do some of this work, and I'm the volunteer. You know, ask my wife; she'll tell you if there is a non-paying, thankless, time-consuming job, I'm right there to put it. But Sally's done a great job, and she sends out newsletters and we've got a great web page. If you haven't seen that, it's really easy to follow what we're doing. At the bottom is a really good index of all of our meetings and easy links to the agendas and the minutes. So that's part of what we do. We've started doing more tours, actually going out and looking at some of the projects. There's a big project, I think the city of Steamboat, this was initiated when Kelly was here, was doing a restoration where Walton Creek runs in. It's turned into a breeding ground for northern pike and other predatory fish, and so they're going to work on that. It turns out it's like what, about $5 to $7 million project, I think it is. So a major project there. We did the Maybell diversion ditch. That is so remote that they had to helicopter the concrete in, build a special road just to get it done. We're doing a big water park in Craig, similar to what we have here in Steamboat Springs, you know, to help them diversify their economy and embrace the opportunity of recreation in their community. So those tours are good. We have a story map that's being built primarily is being led by Yampa. We haven't really mentioned Yampa enough because they're rock stars. They do a tremendous job here. They're right at 5,000 students in Northwest Colorado. They're in every school, elementary, middle, and high school, and they focus on 5th graders, but they really have done a tremendous job. So that the Yampa folks, a big shout out for them. The number one thing though that I talk to the leaders at the state is the importance of messaging. Now, I've run for office 7 times, and you know, anybody here run for office? Let me tell you what, if you don't have a good message, I mean, the first thing people say is, why are you running? You better have a good answer. Because that's right there is your whole campaign. So if we want people to understand more about water, we need to do a more coordinated effort and outreach to build that message. What I see is a 2-phase process of kind of an inventory. We've got lots of survey data. We know where we've got weaknesses. But try to identify the key themes or topics that need to be discussed and help people understand better. But then the second part of it is once we have those topics is get us out of it. We are a bunch of water wonks. We talk in languages that the average person just doesn't connect with. So you hire a really good firm that elects people, you know, and hats off to the GOP. They do a good job running campaigns. Hire companies like that to help us refine that message. Get out there and market test it. They know what works. We tried to pass a ballot question with Colorado Mountain College, and we wrote it up and tried to explain why we didn't want Gallagher there. Well, it failed. So the next time we said, this is really important, we've got to do this, it's killing our revenues. So we hired that company, and they wrote that question. And we got 71% of the vote that time. So how you message is everything, making sure that we not only want to deliver a message, but we want it relevant and consistent. And that, you know, we all can think of a good example of someone repeating ridiculous things enough times that people begin to believe them. So we can do that same thing, only make sure that everyone has a good understanding of water and where it comes from, and get that, build that on top of the experiential stuff that we've been talking about as well.
My next question actually is for you, Juan. Building off the idea of why obviously education is important, but how do you see more communities across Colorado engaging with these conversations? Obviously, we have our water education already has like freshwater news and our magazine, but it's only reaching obviously certain people in communities. So how can we expand that outreach?
I mean, I think Ken was setting me up for this one. We need to start talking common language. We need to be able to hear each other. I mean, I love the magazine, and also there are new channels that people are learning. Some people are learning a lot like through online, TikTok, YouTube. I mean, everybody has a podcast now. Everybody. And people do drive around and listen to the podcast. People are gardening and listen to the podcast. People are hiking. So I think understanding your audience. Who are you talking to? If you are talking to the same people all the time, your message is really good with them. Those people, you got them. And if there are people missing in the space, that means that you need to tweak your message. And also besides the message, building for what Ken shared. Also, who is sharing the message? Because believe it or not, if you are a familiar face from the community who is already a proven leader, you're most likely to listen to them. Versus if I'm a stranger, then no one show up, and I have built no social capital, like people don't even know who I am. And so I think we, in the water space, I mean, my background is environmental engineering, by the way, and I was sharing with someone earlier, I work in a water quality lab for some time. And honestly, I read my thesis from grad school today, and I'm like, what did I just say? And I read the whole page, and I'm like, wow, this sounds really smart. I have no idea what I say. And so when it comes to water space, there is this concept of like, the more wonky you sound, the more you know. Yet, in our advocacy and policy, which is something I have done in the past, people don't care about how much you know. People care about why you care. That's simple. If I stand here and show a bunch of graphics and a bunch of data, those of you who like graphics and who like data will be all about it. But maybe half of you will not get it. And so we need to start tweaking our message, and we need to start sharing about why we care. And I think there is a unifying way for us to come together because we care for Colorado, we care for our communities, we care for our landscape, we care for our businesses, we care for our homes and our families. And so there's something we always hear, they call Colorado way of life. Like, what is it if it's in what we have? And so that needs to be translated to water. And so I think, you were right spot on. And a way to do that is really understanding our community, our audience, and making sure that we are communicating the best way that will land with who we're trying to talk.
Perfect. I think that segues really nice into the next question for Kelly. How can people get involved in the conversation around water policy specifically on both local, state, and even federal level? I think it's obviously becoming more and more clear, but why do you think this is so important?
Okay, so I need the federal one out of the way. Okay, so obviously federal fire rates, federal funding clawbacks, that impacts more than just poop in the woods. It's gonna be a really big problem. There's an article in the Denver Post today, where my boss was quoted talking about how these broad federal funding freezes implemented by the Trump administration have thrown wildfire prevention partnerships between the state and federal agencies into limbo. We manage over 350 federal grants worth about $300 million.
Say that again, $300 million.
$300 million, not just for the Department of Natural Resources and our agencies. And we're state. Imagine for our federal lands, the implications of this. So everything is in question, said Dan Gibbs, my boss, in the paper, in the Denver Post today. Everything. We have no guidance from our federal partners about what potentially is in and what potentially is not. It is totally uncertain with our federal partners right now, is what he said. I know this sounds very doom and gloomy, but I bring it up in the context that if this alarms you, now is the time to advocate with Colorado's congressional delegation. And almost 40% of Colorado's lands are owned and managed by the federal government. And I guess I urge you all not just to be mad at the Colorado delegation. On both sides of the aisle, this is concerning for them. I would say part of what constituents can do is give them political cover, right? Do it in a way, especially for our Republican congressional representatives, they need to hear from their constituents, right? They need to know that their constituents have their back. They're gonna fight for the resources that we need here in the state of Colorado. So I'll say now is not the time to check out. But try to do it in a way that's not just screaming in the void, and try to do it in a way that you apply the principle of charity for folks that might see the issue a little bit differently, right? Try to understand where they're coming from. Lead with that rather than leading with anger. Okay, I had to get that out of my system, thank you. It's been a rough 5 weeks for my time.
Yes.
So let's talk about how you get involved in state policy. I'll start with the state capitol, where I get to spend a lot of time this time of year. You want to pay attention to what's happening in that building. Not many people do. You all are very lucky here. You've got Senator Dylan Roberts and Representative Megan Lukens. They are some of the smartest water legislators in the building. They probably work on some of the most bipartisan bills. I know they're kind of a go-to for the department for sponsoring our priority bills. So, similarly, talk to them, help them develop good policy, but also provide them political cover, right? And they need support. If they're pushing a bipartisan bill, even. So, it's definitely good to engage with your local legislators. Sometimes it can be hard to keep track of everything that's happening in the Capitol. I mean, you can follow the website, you can reach out to their offices. Sometimes that can be helpful. Feel free to reach out to me if you're hearing about bills. I'll say our local news has actually gotten it's really improved as far as how much reporting they're doing on what's happening at the legislature, so pay attention to that. And I just want to reiterate that your voice matters in the Gold Dome. So take advantage of that. We're working a lot of water bills. If you have questions about it, I'm happy to fill you in more, but I don't want to bore you all with the list of our legislative agenda this year. I'll also say, locally, and Ken already spoke about this, but I do think it's really great to engage with the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable. I first got on, I was first appointed elected, chosen for a roundtable seat in 2014, and it really grew me, right? And it really helped folks from the upper Yampa, the lower Basin, and the White River all come together and really work through challenges and shared goals. And so I definitely think that's a really great opportunity to talk to Sally and Ken about getting more involved with the roundtables. There's also some great local organizations that were even mentioned, the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, Yampatica, Friends of Yampa, Community Agriculture Alliance, also you all pay taxes to the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District and to the Colorado River District, so start to engage and get involved in those organizations. And and the Yampa River Fund as well, of course, is another really good one to engage with. So I think I hit it all, federal, state, local. I will say local engagement, community work is going to be wildly important as we manage for sort of the chaos above us at the federal level.
Perfect. I think that's a great response. And as somebody who also cares a lot about these issues, I do think it is satisfying to reach out to legislators. Like, they do care about their constituents. As I had conversations with Dylan Roberts, and they want to hear from you, even if it's maybe you're reaching out on, it could be a bipartisan bill. It doesn't have to be something that you necessarily believe in all the way. But I think, so definitely reach out, and I'll say locally. I'm also a fan of IBCC. My next two questions are open to all of you guys. Kind of basically, I think, covered this first one, but I was curious to know, what are some partnerships and collaborations that have worked in the past for the region and that will need to become more prevalent when it comes to snow and water conservation? And then I guess this could be locally or states. If there's anything that you guys think you kind of touched on all the local ones, if anyone wants to add to something, other partnerships or collaborations.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, that's fine. I was like, oh, she already answered.
Sorry,
She knew
jumped
it was
ahead.
Yes. And then the next one is kind of broader, just kind of thinking about specifically with snow, kind of in your opinion and your role, kind of what are the biggest threats and then opportunities for the basin when it comes to snow.
uncertainty. Uncertainty on the political side of things, uncertainty on weather. You know, I wish we had a magic, you know, ball that we can find the future and read it and be prepared. And I think we need to obviously be creative of how we respond. I mean, you were saying earlier about the Nino, but oh, just I'm ready to do whatever comes my way. So that means that you have built a business that is sustainable and also is prepared for any type of circumstances. And so I think community, I mean, even though he's using the word climate, the community resilience is the Yampa Valley resilient, is the industry and the people and our reliance on water, are we resilient? So how are we building a resilient community? It takes all people involved in the community, and honestly, living with uncertainty when it comes to snowpack, and preparedness for drier, warmer, hotter summers as well. It really takes all parties. There was this initiative, and I'm thinking about it, my previous job in Northeast Denver, there was, we worked in this community called Montebello, one of the most racially diverse, low income, low economic status, and they organized themselves, talking about locally. And it was a local organization, we came together and they had this like housing project with like access to food, green space, a little clinic, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so I think it takes sometimes local initiative to really shine in moments when others look away, because you know what is needed, and when you come together locally and find resources and everybody pull their weight, then you're truly resilient moving forward. And so how all of these local nonprofits are working together is definitely the path for me of how we can then better address the uncertainty with snowpack and the uncertainty of the political shifting of federally. So that's kind of like my 2 cents.
Well, we have a proud history of doing a lot of work with partnerships and collaboration. My first experience was with working on the recreation water rights here. This was something the entire business community saw as really a critical issue. The river is kind of the cornerstone of the economy here. I mean, without that, we wouldn't have the snowmaking for the mountain, and we wouldn't have all the summer recreation. In case you've never noticed, all of our cities and towns tend to be on major features of river water bodies or confluences. So rivers are critical. So that came together really well. The membership of the Basin Roundtable is really, it's not the same people sitting in this room. Agriculture is a big deal in water. You know, your water rights are predominantly and being used by agriculture. So that's well represented and a traditionally pretty conservative group of people. So you have to sometimes set aside some of your strong beliefs and passions and just be a really good listener. And you realize that water is very political, but it is not partisan. And people will listen to you, and the more you hear their complaints and understand what they're doing, and not try to sell them anything. And worst thing you can do is try to save them. They do not want to be saved. They've been doing this for a long time. They know what they're doing and why. But if you can gain their trust and gain their confidence, they are often willing to try new things. But you gotta be that. There's always a good analogy is most ranchers learn and decide to try something new by leaning over the fence talking to their neighbor. And it worked well for them, and I guess I better give that a try. The Little Snake River is a great example of that. The other collaborative that I'm working on right now is just really exciting. There is so much more power in collaboration and working together. If you have all of these NGOs and agencies and local governments and stakeholders and the industry people, private property owners, all working together on forest health and rangeland management, that is a powerful group. And just as an example, we're up for our second round of Joint Chiefs funding. We got $9 million for the last 3 years. That was the largest award ever done in the United States. We're asking for 8 again for the next 3 years. As soon as they name the chiefs of the U.S. Forest Service and NRCS, we'll have a chance to get that approved. But we did out of the Bureau of Reclamation money that was here for, it gave 50 million to or 40 million, I guess it was 40 million. Yeah, it was 40 to the Shoshone Water Rights Program, but, and 5 here in Steamboat Springs for the Walton Creek. But we actually were lucky enough to apply for 2 different ones. One more focused on water activities and based out of the Little Snake office, and the second one is out of the Medicine Bow Forest Service office. Russ Bacon authored an application, and we received over $40 million. So once these funds are unfrozen, we've got a lot of work to do here in the next 6 years, and we're really excited about the partnerships that we have and what we can accomplish. Threats and opportunities. Threats, boy, that's a list. I'm not even going to touch that one. That's kind of scary. There's a bunch of them. The opportunity, well, you know, an old rancher saying is, only a darn fool complains about nice weather, and we will have probably a lot more nice weather. And so I guess you're going to have to just say, well, I guess we're going to be changing our lifestyle a little bit. We're going to be doing more summer and outdoor recreation in our shorts and less in our snow pants. But the main thing is adversity is an opportunity.
Great. I'll try to be brief here, but you know, just kind of getting at the risks. We know that, right? We know that there's less snow, there's less water. There's less water, it's harder to produce food. There's less water in the river for aquatic life, for recreation, for drinking, more wildfire risk, etc. But there is a ton of opportunity around climate resilience, climate adaptation, like I mentioned before. You know, I do think we have the tools and frankly the grit to really adapt as best we can to those risks.
In the ski industry, for here specifically, but definitely across the ski industry, we're all trying to adapt and get more and more efficient. You know, down to variable frequency drive pumps, which pump water, only the amount of water you need as you need it, and then rises and falls, which saves energy, which takes less water out of the river, as opposed to a pump that just goes full blast and that's all you can do. We're trying to all of our automated snowmaking guns up on the mountain now valve up and down as the weather changes, right? So before it took 3 to 4 hours to adjust each gun because you'd have to go up, you have to go to each one, touch it manually on snowmobile or hiking or on your skis or snowboard, and it took forever. Now it just does it immediately. So we're much more efficient with the water that we're taking, much more efficient with the power that we're using, much more efficient with the air that we're compressing because they're compressed locally instead of this big air plant that has to fill up pipes across the mountain. So we're taking, like, for specifically snowmaking, we're updating all of our snowcats as fast as we can to get them to be less polluting with diesel fuel, so they're much cleaner. I mean, there's barely anything that comes out of the exhaust pipe of a diesel engine that has DEF in it, diesel exhaust fluid, which basically cleans up all of the nasty stuff that can come out of the tailpipe. We are using the drone to make sure that we're only making the amount of snow that we need. We're using the drone to make sure that we're putting the snow only to places where we need it and not overmaking and not having snow wasted over to the side. All of those initiatives. And then we're trying to go carbon neutral or use all renewables by 2030 is our goal. So we have all these initiatives as far as like our opportunities to be better stewards, and we're taking that on. But I think another one is, to get out there and have fun, to go ski, to go hiking, to go mountain biking, to go hunting, to go fishing, to do whatever you want to do, whatever brings you joy outside. Go out there and do it, and bring as many people as you can out there to do it with you. And then when there's tough discussions about whatever issue might be on the table, whether it's water or wildlife or plant life or whatever, you can have a conversation about, hey, did you like that when we were out there? Don't you want to save this? So I think that's a really big opportunity for us to continue moving forward and getting people engaged and involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your guys' answers, especially from your each unique perspective. A final question question kind of personally from me. So as someone who grew up obviously surrounded by snow, I was skiing since I could walk probably. And I just got back as a competitive skier. I was just in Anchorage, Alaska, where we were skiing on only a 2.5-kilometer groom track with dirt on the sides and the rain and 40 degrees. So it's like something, I'm having to, travel farther and farther to find that snow. So it's also something that deeply impacts me. But more broadly, what advice would you give to the youth of today for the best way to engage in conversations like these around water conservation and snow? How can we best prepare future generations to be educated advocates in a world that frankly seems to be out of our control? I think there's a lot of obviously fear and like the idea that my individual actions don't matter, so why am I doing anything? And then kind of that shutdown. So how can we best open up that conversation and kind of that inspiration? You're all welcome to answer. I know you touched on it a lot as well, but if you have any final thoughts.
I think, you probably see it. You were telling me about traveling all over and skiing. I think the voice of everyone has the equal, if not more weight. And I think using your voice and speaking and informing and learning and sharing what you see, what you see and tell right now, you tell that to other people, be like, I need to go farther. I need to try to find, I'm training, I do this. And I see clearly what's happening. I remember when I was closer to your age, being at a conference in New Orleans about climate change, which a bunch of people from all over the world, and everybody was sharing their perspective, and there were from like Southeast Asia, and Africa, and Europe, and Latin America, and in Russia, and it was just like hearing the stories of what others were witnessing. We call it differently, but at the end of the day, we're like, something is different, something is changing, and we need to do something about it. And so I feel like there is a power there's power in science and data, and there's power in storytelling and sharing what we're witnessing in our own individual experience. You talk about ranching and farming. I grew up with farming and ranching. I was just back home visiting my uncle's ranch, and after I came back, he called me, he's like, I think I want to sell everything. And I was like, what? Don't do that. And we had to have a whole conversation. He's like, well, my kids don't want to do anything. I'm like, my brother wants, you should talk to him. And we were trying to I'm not even there. I'm like trying to listen, don't do that, like, let's figure out a way to work. And he's like, well, it's getting harder, and the well is drying, and like we bought farther out the mountain, and this new land actually has more water. But even hearing his stories of what he's witnessing, what he's experienced, it leads us to come together, and we need to be creative. We need to be innovation on the ways that we address it. And the moment that we lose it, we just stop talking to each other and we stop sharing. And so I think that's one piece of advice, and just everybody has the power to change the course where the direction where we're heading, and don't ever hesitate to share it and go with your guts. And if you feel the urge to say something, say it.
First of all, thank you all for spending your Sunday morning with us. I was going to be skiing on Howson Hill. I'd have to miss a rope drop over there on Sunday morning. But Youth Water Festival, we started doing one with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District in partnership with Yampa and other education-oriented groups here. So this, I think, is the third or fourth year this year, and I think it'll be the fourth year. Yeah. And that's well attended, and it's every fifth grader in Northwest Colorado. It's every school. It's quite a day. Hundreds and hundreds of kids. We have all these booths set up. Every hour they move to a new booth. It's really quite a day, and that early indoctrination of young people and helping them understand the importance of water and where the water comes from and what river do you live on, and just all these basic things that really can spark a whole lifetime of interest in water and water education. And water is something that you can educate yourself for the rest of your life. You're never going to know it all. You're always going to be learning something. There's always another interesting article. Almost every day there's a good story somewhere in one of the papers about all that's going on, and there is a lot going on right now. So, so the three things I have done is you talk about water, you talk about drought, you talk about climate change. These are important things. They're relevant. You read everything that you can, and write something. Write Colorado Water Congress Accelerator Program, and former head of DNR, Jennifer Gimbel, has done a lot of work with CSU, and we had a big luncheon with dozens, I think there was 40 different young people that were working on water-related higher education. They're all in master's programs, and it was fun being at the Water Congress because I said, at the table I was at, I had 8 young ladies that were all working on this, and Aaron Wilson and I were saying, you know what, there's over 600 professionals here. These are all attorneys, engineers, lobbyists, and you know what? They all have in common, they're looking for employees, and you guys are exactly who they're looking for. So just remember that, you know, your life's work is to find your life's work.
Well, Sidney, I really love this question, especially coming from you, because I was exactly like you, once upon a time in this valley. And so, like, my first piece of advice to young people, and to you specifically, Sidney, is seek out mentors. I have 2 mentors sitting in this room. You know who you are? But I owe my career to. And look at me now.
Yeah, you almost ended up at Upper Yampa.
Yeah. And look at me now. So, my other piece of advice is be a lifelong learner, and WECO is here to help you with that. I'm gonna see how many shout-outs I can fit in.
You're the
So
best.
WECO. And I also just want to say, please, please, please don't lose hope. Now is not the time to check out. We need everybody to care. We need everybody to work hard. We need everybody to be really smart and strategic about how they apply their energy. But then my other piece of advice is check out every once in a while.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll just wear yourself out.
Go ski.
Which is why I'm wearing snow pants, because I'm gonna check out shortly after this. We need to spend time with our people, with our family and friends, or alone in our woods, in the snow, on our rivers. We need to refill our cups. And I'm gonna ask y'all to humor me, because I'm gonna read a very short poem. My favorite, I have it taped up to my office, downtown Denver. It's called A Piece of Wild Things by Wendell Berry, and I think it's very relevant right now. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests, in his beauty, on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought or grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and in freedom.
I would say drag as many people as you can out of their comfort zone and into your world. My friend Gus got a job at Yellowstone right after we graduated high school. He's like, you should come with me. And I was like, okay. So I applied and went out there. We left 5 days after we graduated high school. I never went back to Wisconsin, except as a fan. And if he hadn't done that, and if that hadn't been an opportunity for me, I don't think I would care anything about water in the mountains. And so it just takes that one little life experience, that one little thing to drag someone out of, a little tiny, even this tiny town where people are surrounded by it. They might not be out of their comfort zone, and they might not be thinking about it at all. Just do that for them. I think that's really really important for people to just not get stuck in a little world that you surround yourself in and expose yourself to different viewpoints and ideas, different types of people. Drag yourself out of your own comfort zone and go talk to those people as well. Just anything that and get exposure, or get people exposure to this life, you know, will help save water in Colorado. Good luck.
Perfect, thank you guys for those responses. I will say Kelly is the reason I'm at WECO in the first place, and so has been a mentor. And I think to your point of writing, like being able, I got to publish my own freshwater news article this summer, and on aerial cloud seeding in the North Platte, and like that experience was pretty amazing. And I think being, even if you're not like publishing articles, like just writing letters to the editor, or whatever that may be, or letters to legislators, definitely super impactful. But I think that was our final question. So thank you so much to Ryan, Kelly, Ken, and Juan for your amazing responses. So Ken, I want to thank them. He was behind the scenes helping me put this together when I was like, I want to do this, and well, we want to do a mountain climb. I was like, well, ski-free Sundays are in Olson, and I live in Steamboat, and I think that would be a really great event. So thank you to Tess for putting this on. And obviously to Juan as well. So after obviously